जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह. Okay, can we remember what we spoke about last time? Give you a clue.
Andy?
Yeah. So, if you remember, we said that there are 4 Pauri associated with listening, Surya. And we covered off the first 2. But I think it would just be useful just to cover off what the importance of listening is, because Maharaj has time and time again explained to us the importance of it, to the point where we'll talk about this at the end, but the essence of these 4 lines is that to listen to Bani, to listen to Nam, is your first step on the spiritual journey. And you can't undertake a spiritual journey without actually listening, without Suniya. So that's the importance of it. Now, we covered off last time, what we talked about was some of the virtues that are associated, some of the powers that you get from listening. And today we're going to just build on that with the preceding 2 verses as well.
Okay, so the repeated talks at the end of all 4 Pauriya said what? Nanak, all together. Nanak Bhagavatam. Okay, so it says that by listening to Nam, to Bani, to Kirtan, to Vaheguru, to the Guru's instruction, what happens? Sune dukh paap ka nas. Neither does dukh, pains of any sort, not just physical, but mental as well.
So what were the reasons that we talked about last time why people have to endure dukh? And why they get into what we refer to as paap? What were the reasons? Or what was it a consequence of?
So what was your presentation on YouTube? Karma. Okay, what sort of karma can people have? Good and bad. Yeah.
So what we said last time was that by doing the wrong things or not doing the right things, the consequence of that is that we may hurt somebody, deliberately or otherwise. And if we do that, either by word, deed or action, there's always a rebound, a reaction, a consequence. And that consequence is then for us to suffer. And what Maharaj is telling us in those verses of all 4 Suniya Pauriya is that the bhakts are free from that type of action, because they found Nam, and through Nam they don't commit those sort of things. They don't undertake hurting of other people. They don't commit sin. And then for that reason, Maharaj tells us that they are in Sada Vigas. Now, Sada ki hunda? What's Sada?
Sada.
Sada. If I said that, what would that mean? Sada they don't know.
Always.
Always, yeah. Yeah, so Maharaj is saying not only, so we talk about Vigas is joyfulness, but Maharaj is saying that they remain Sada in Vigas, because it's not like us. We can have good days, we can have bad days, and we can be in Vigas one day and then not be in the following day. But Jiriya Vasta, the state that the Bhagat is in, they remain forever, perpetually in Vigas.
Who else is in? Yeah. So who else is in Vigas? If the Bhagats are in Vigas, who else is in Vigas always? Sorry? The Gurus, and who else then?
We mentioned this in Japji Sahib earlier.
When we talked about Hukmi. Yeah. Who's Veparwa and always in Vigas? Hanji. God. Very good. So Vaheguru is always in Vigas. Vaheguru is never in sorrow.
It's no coincidence that Bhagavad Vigas Vichya and Vaheguru is in Vigas as well. Because some of what we talk about today is about virtues. And Waheguru blesses his bhakts, his saints, with the same virtues that Waheguru has, the same traits that Waheguru has. So that Vigar state that Waheguru is perpetually in, he blesses his saints with that same state as well.
Yeah. So Maharaj is full of gone are virtues, and we'll talk more about virtues later on. So what we'll do is to begin is we'll do the part of all 4 Pauriyan again, and then at the end we'll probably listen to some Kirtan of the Pauriyan as well. So what we'll do is now, if we all together start at Siddhapir Sarna, and we'll say all 4 Pauriyan, then we'll talk about the 10th and the 11th body going forward. Okay. Sunaya Siddhapir Sarnatha Sunaya Tattavakas Sunaya Deepalopatal Sunaya Pohen Sakkeka Nanak Bhagatan Sada Vigas Sunaya Dukapakanas Sunaya Isar Brahma Inda Sunaya Moksalan Mandir Sunaya Jog Julitan Pir Sunaya Sastra Samatade Nanak Bhagatan Sada Vigas Sunaya Dukapakanas Sunaya Sat Santok Gyan Sunaya Aksat Ka Isnan Sunaya Parpapa Leman Sunaya Lage Serdyan Nanak Bhagatan Sada Vigas Sunaya Dukapakanas Sunaya Saraguna Kega Sunaya Sek Pir Padsa Sunaya Ande Pavera Sunaya Hath Hume Saga Nanak Bhagatan Sada Vigas Sunaya Dukapakanas. So each body finishes Sunaya Dukapakanas. That pain and sins are erased by listening to Bani. This is the instruction of Vaheguru. Okay, we'll start going through the body, the second 2 body.
So the first verse now of the Nami body starts as what? What is it? Get up, what up, back here.
Anji. Which one? So Sunaya what? Sat Santok Gyan. Altogether Sunaya Sat Santok Gyan. 3 words: Sat, Santok and Gyan.
Okay. I'm putting this off blood there. I don't know what it is, guys. I mean,
you
seem very preoccupied by something. I'm not feeling the love here. Okay, so can I have some ekagrata here? We'll talk about what ekagrata is later. Okay. Let's focus now, because some of the concepts here again are quite difficult to get our heads around for all of us. So you do need to focus and concentrate. Okay. So the first line that we've just talked about, we're about to talk about, is Sunaya Sat Santok Gyan. Okay. So the literal translation is, who wants to read what the literal translation is on the screen for me? Hanji.
Listening, truth, contentment, and spiritual wisdom.
Yeah. Okay. So truth, contentment, and spiritual wisdom. Okay. Is the literal word for word Akri Arth. Now, in time-honoured fashion, we go way beyond just Akri Arth, because that just gives us the surface answer. The answer that goes beyond that now is what we'll talk about.
Okay. As ever, sometimes words and pictures always help give us what we need. Sat plus Santok, you're going to say it's under the maths lesson coming up. Sat, Santok, added together, give you something called Dan. Dan, give back. To give Dan. Can you do it?
That's Dan, that is. Close.
Is it money?
It can be.
Can be. Yeah,
It's
so
one form of it.
Dan.
Yeah.
A gift.
Gift.
Yeah. So it's to donate. Yeah. So you say that I've gifted, or I've given this item as my gift to somebody else. Okay. So what we are saying here is that in this context, now this is not in every context. In this context, where you have Sat, truth, and Santok, contentment, you put the 2 together, you create Dan. On their own, what does Sat mean? Sat ki hunda. We've said Sat is
Truth.
truth. Okay.
Some
Santokh
is
Always.
contentment. Yeah. So give me a little bit more of a description of what contentment is.
Anji.
Happiness. Not
Yeah. Anything else?
Being
And-
satisfied.
Being satisfied. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anji,
So
yours?
yeah. Some more.
Okay. Okay. It all means happy with. So you can be happy because you've got
Yeah.
something over the top, lots of something.
So happiness in this context here, or contentment here, could be that I've got £10 in my pocket. Bysod's got £100, but I'm more content with my £10 than he is with his 100, because I've got some talk, he hasn't. Or you could do it the other way around if that made you happy.
Makes me sad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so some talk isn't necessarily an absolute. It's within your own mindset, within your own avasta, your state. Some talk hega, jana hega.
Okay, let's take you back when you were little toddlers at nursery. Now, what do children do at nursery? What are these children doing? Hanji, Jujams.
Playing
They play.
Play.
And what did they play with?
toys.
Toys. What was your favourite toy at school there?
Cars.
Cars.
Yeah. So
Tell me, what was yours? The dolly dolly honey. Yeah, was it? Yeah. Other. Anything else? Yeah, I think him at Saint is plastic cups. Yeah.
is
Okay.
today could be something
Okay.
else.
So let's take an example.
Okay. So
So I was going to say, so when you were at toys sometimes, you had toys at school and you were playing with it and then somebody else wants to play with it. Now how many people says, get off, that's mine. You did it, that's honest. Seven, you still do it, he never gives me his waffle. Good job, Singh. Did you do it? Who else?
Yeah.
So shall we take him with Singh's cups off him? Do you think he'll share with us? Oh, okay. He might do, he might not.
okay. So what we're trying to do is illustrate what dan is. Yeah. What is to give. Now, the point is that we're not naturally in a state when we're born to give. It's something that we acquire, something that we learn. So a child, if you try and take a toy off a child, he'll wail or she'll wail. She'll probably throw some things at you as well. Have a massive tantrum, and you're not going to get that toy. To the point where the child would rather destroy the toy, yeah? Simply because avasta, to share, to dan, is a learned trait. Is something that we learn, something that we embrace. Now, unfortunately, there are some people, adults, that never quite learn the idea of being danny. So it's not necessarily just an age thing, but in most cases it tends to be.
What tends to happen, as children grow up, if they don't get this or learn this avasta or this status of being santoki or being able to share, as they grow up through life, so you'll see as people grow up, as they move on from toys to something more wealthy or more precious. There might be a budget. I've seen children fight over budget at Kirtan class and double A and things like that. And you had oh look, we're going to talk about Serge today, and he turns up. Ada. There's a space here. Ada. So what happens is people grow up with that same learned habit of not sharing, and the not sharing element, whilst at toys level is not so bad, when it gets to wider society and people get in society, it gets more difficult. So, for instance, the picture I've got here is there somebody's giving somebody, it's like $1 coin. So people begin to share. So today, for instance, if one of you didn't have a pen, you might lend your pen to somebody else, etc., etc. But in wider society, you get people that lend each other money to help each other out. They might give money in seva terms. They might do something. The question is that when you add the two together, when you become santoki, you're able to give down.
Because it's raja. You're content with what you have, and you feel that by giving something, you're not losing out. Yeah. So, hence the reason why we say that this avasta is one that we acquire, something that we learn, not necessarily something we're instinctively born with.
So Dan is a very, very important thing, and it comes through listening. Sunye, Satta, Santoka, and when you add the two together, then you become a Dani person. Then that Dan enters. Sat, Santok represents itself in real terms as Dan. Now, where do you learn? How do you become a Dani? We said that you're not necessarily born being a Dani. What makes you a Dani? Yeah? Now, a lot of the times what you find is that if your parents are Dani, then you tend to be Dani. If your grandparents are Dani, you tend to be Dani.
Yeah. The other aspect of this is thodi sangat kiddi hai, thodi sangat kedi hai. If you spend time, and I'm using the word sangat in a wider context here, not just in Gurdwara village. The people that you keep company with, the chances are if you and your friends, or if your friends are Dani, you'll be Dani. Yeah. If your family is traditionally Dani, then you will be Dani as well. So it becomes a mode of conduct within a group of people to be a Dani.
Okay, so the reason why God Sikhs are Dani, because our gurus were Danis. Guru Nanak Dev Ji, from the Satya Sauda Sakhi, all the way through Langar, Mata Kivi was known for her contribution to Langar. Guru Arjan Dev Ji looking after lepers, yeah, and Pai Kanhaiya Ji sharing water.
You could say that Sikhi itself is a Dan. Yeah, so some earlier programs we talk about Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj entering this world, or Waheguru entering this world in the form of Guru Nanak Dev Ji to give something to this world, because there was something missing. Yeah, so Sikhi itself is an act of mercy. Is to say that Dunya hai karti, Dunya is saying, you know, we need something, we need help. And Waheguru, in the form of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, enters this world to remove some of that pain. Yeah, so Sikhi itself is a Dan, and all of the actions that you can see on those bottom slides are an illustration of that Dan.
Okay. So when we talk about Dan, who do we normally give Dan to? Who gives Dan to who? Angie? Rich to the poor. So that's one example. So what generally, in more general terms, who gives to who? Somebody that has gives to somebody that hasn't. So is that Dan always in the form of money? What else can you share?
Food.
Food or Angie?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. Good, yeah. Yeah. Even when your parents are teaching you Bart, they're sharing with you. Yeah. Whoever teaches you Kirtan and Santya, they're sharing with you. They're giving you what we can call a Dan, because spiritually or from a knowledge point of view, we may not have that Dan. So the Gurus are forever giving us Dan. The Guru's mat is a Dan, the Guru's teaching is a Dan. So the first line of this body is saying Sat, Santok and Gyan. The Sat and Santok are lead to Dan.
So to bring this together, what Maharaj is saying is that by listening to Naam Bani, the outcome is Sat and Santok. You put the two together, you become a Dani. Yeah, your instinct, if you like, becomes a one of Dan, to give, not just to receive.
So Maharaj says that those people that don't share their wealth or their money or anything else they have, they are sansari, they are just worldly people. Those people that do give Dan and do share and do show these traits, that have Sat and Santok, they are dharmi, they are religious, they are righteous people. So, go back, the body. So the first line is Sunay, Sat, Santok, Gyan. So just coming, just slightly more in terms of a description of Santok. So, Santok. We talked about people being Sansari, people being Santoki. Now, in the last line, what does it? Nanak Bhakta. Now, Santok. A trait or a value that is greatly ingrained in Bhakts, in saintly people, in Gurmukhs, in sects, is they are Santoki. They give Dan freely. Now, the Bhakts are always content with very little. So when we talked about what does Santok mean, people said it means satisfied, it means something. Bhakts are content with very little. They're not bothered about having designer label clothes, having lots of food and having worldly possessions. Yeah, They're content with pretty much small amounts of things. And that's what keeps them content. They have some thought, they don't want more than that. They're quite happy with that. Yeah? An example of this is Bhakta Ravidas. Now Bhakta Ravidas was very poor. And God knew that Bhakta Ravidas was worshipped his name, that he was a poet. And he didn't care much for money, but he was very poor. And Maharaj and God would actually every day put a coin in Bhakta Ravidas's house under his pillow. And Bhakta Ravidas would see it and cast it into a corner of the room. He didn't care much for money. So it just shows he was pretty content with what he had, and Bhakta Ravidas was poor. Yeah? His job was to take the skin of animals, dry it, and make shoes and other leather goods out of it. And he was pretty poor, but he was very content. He was very santokhi. They have no trishna, they have limited trishna. They don't have desires like worldly people have desires. If I have 100, I want 1,000. If I got 1,000, I want 100,000. Then I want 1,000,000, and I want this. Which is where man is stood. And that's why when we said, why are people dukhi? Because Guruji says that we're looking for sok in the wrong places. Okay. And finally, you find that bhakts seem to have kirpa on them all the time. Even if they have very little, Vaheguru is always showering kirpa and mercy on them. So that's why they're always in vikas. In fact, some other tukka, aap tyag benti kare leho prabhu lad lai. The bhakt state of mind is more about they renounce selfishness. So we talked about people that don't give dana. Bhakts are forever giving. Yeah? And they lose those bad things in life, and instead they attach themselves to God. And their adar, their support, in Anansa we say, for bhakts, Sacha Namra Adar. They say that the name is my adar, not wealth, not possessions. Yeah? Sacha Nam Adar Mera, Jin Pukhan, Sab Gavanya. So they don't have a hunger for anything, they're satisfied. And that's why they don't have Dok and Bob. Okay. Next Dok. All together?
It's the same Dok, but it's the last
same Dok, yeah.
part of the Dok now.
Say the Dok again then. And what's in red?
Yeah. So, deliberately the translation is spiritual wisdom, is spiritual knowledge. Because the other type of knowledge, the dunyavi knowledge, worldly knowledge, doesn't give you the sort of spiritual benefits that spiritual knowledge does. So, what Maharaj is saying is that through Nam, all of the knowledge that you would associate with spirituality, Sadi Gati Gadani, how we're going to become free,
लंगर साबित पहले जाना करते हैं सके चार पेंटिंग अच्छा पेंटिंग कर तुसी कर रहे हैं अच्छा 4 बजे तक करें हाँ जी तो दस्या नहीं सकता अच्छा बस हाँ अच्छा 4 बजे आ जाओ ठीक है I thought we had a new joiner. Okay सुने सत संतोख ज्ञान. What does Gyan mean?
Wisdom, yeah. Okay. So only Nam gives you that spiritual knowledge. Yeah. And again, it's not something that is distinct from the first part of this verse, because spiritual knowledge, as we've heard, is that we can attain it through the dawn or the gift of somebody else as well. So that also links into this verse as well.
Okay, so what other sort of Gyan are they? And are they important or not important? So what sort of Gyan is there? Saj, what sort of Gyan do you have? You're not sure. What sort of knowledge do you have? If I said Gyan is knowledge, what sort of knowledge do you have? What do you want to be when you grow up?
A computer technician.
Computer technician. So you're going to have some sort of Gyan, some sort of knowledge in IT. Yeah?
Yeah.
So what do you want to do?
Then Punjabi school teacher.
You want to be a Punjabi school? Punjabi don't do. Okay.
That's ambition, that is.
That's ambition. Okay, good. Anybody else got some more ambition than that? Angie, you want to be an engineer?
That's a good one.
But that's a good engineer. Engineer is kind of good. Yes. Okay. So you all want to do something, yeah, yeah. And some of you already at university wanted to be something or want something, and you need gyan for that. And I'm not saying that gyan is bad, but alongside that gyan, we need the gyan that Maharaj said, which is gyan you can't learn from books. We can go on the internet and sometimes learn about Sikhi, but Guruji said that's the starting point. Yeah. The real Kamai of Sikhi, and when we get onto the Panch Parwan Pauriyan, after we finish the Monday Pauriyan, after we finish the Sunday Pauriyan, is that is actually then where Sikhi starts, where you actually apply the theory. So those of you that go to school, you do lots of theory, and then you have to do some practical stuff, don't you? Yeah. So Sikhi then takes a practical route, yeah, and at that time, okay, your worldly gyan, your worldly knowledge will be useful, but your spiritual knowledge will be even more useful. Because as the older you get, and you know we talk about the 5 evils, yeah? I mean, little baby, the 5 evils don't actually satar you or disturb you that much. The older you get, we talked about that money example, it starts from toys, it goes to something else, it goes to nicking somebody's land, nicking somebody's this, and then not sharing, etc., and stealing people's money, yeah? So, as you get older, the spiritual wisdom that you build, and you're fortunate because your parents put so much time in you learning about Sikhi from an earlier age, yeah? Because you get to university and you some people and they'll say, Mool mantra ki hunda. Oh, how do you do that? And you know something? They just don't have that gyan. Nobody gave them that daan, yeah? So you're fortunate. So gathering the gyan of spiritual knowledge can't be learned from books. It can only be learned in Sangat, from other Gosiks, from Mahapurukhs, from Bhagats, from the Guru. This is where this gyan comes from. So this isn't saying that, yeah, I'm a Naam. Yeah, Naam Jap, well, guess what? You'll have all the worldly knowledge you want, but the one that people can't get, yeah, is spiritual wisdom. Is Suniya Sabda, Santok and Gyan. So we spent quite a long time on the first one, but these are very important virtues. And gone, all we get out of Vaheguru is we get gone. We'll get gone, and eventually those gone will lead to enlightenment and to merging with Vaheguru. So Suniya Sabda, Santok, Gyan. Shall we move on? Next talk all together. Okay. Arsat ka Ishna. Arsat what? What does Art and Sat give you? Because so you and Punjabi class teacher, Art kinne hunde hai? Sat kinne hunde hai? 60. And all if you add them together you get 68
is the magic number.
68 what?
Places of pilgrimage.
And what did we say these places of pilgrimage are? Because we've said it before. What do people do at these places of pilgrimage? They bathe. Ishnanak up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, literal translation. Who wants to give me a literal translation? Anybody give me a literal translation?
I think we just said it.
No.
That's it.
Listening to take your cleansing bath at the 68 places of pilgrimage. Now, it doesn't mean that suddenly you're going to get transported to 68 different places and you'll have had a very, very quick bath at all of them. Maharaj is saying that this is the benefit. Yeah, so people say that Ashnan Karna at Tirath gives you great virtue, is something that of great value. Maharaj is saying that Naam gives you all 68 places in one attempt.
Yeah, the Shabd Tirath Naam Jandiya Tirath Naam hai. For us as God 6, our Tirath is Naam. Even when we go to the Bar Sahib or Tarntar or anywhere else there's a Sarovar, with the Ishnan, with the actual physical bathing, there's always Naam together with it. Without Naam, there's no real Antargat Tirath Mal Naam. The inside Tirath is Naam. The real Tirath is Naam. Now, in India, traditionally there were 68 places, and these places are not bad just because we say they're bad. The reason why they got a bad name was that they did not, people that went there did the physical Ishnan and nothing else.
So their minds remained polluted. Yeah, so their mind was still full of jealousy, ego, deceit, lying, anger, all of the things that we want to avoid. And yet they thought that everything will be okay. No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So this is what Maharaj is telling us, is that real Ishnan, as we've just heard, is apne manu Ishnan karna. Yeah, to wash your mind, yeah, wash your insides with Naam, with Bani, with Gyan. That's true Ishnan.
So if you look at some examples about the bhakts and Ishnans, yeah. So at heart, the form that Ishnan is important for some, but for us, we get it through that. Now, some people say, well, over the centuries, over time, over the hundreds of years, bhakts go to do Ishnan as well. They go to Tirthas. So why do they do it? And why were Tirthas once upon a time important and less so now?
So the difference between that and an average person going to do Ishnana at Tirth is the bhakt actually blesses or purifies the Tirth. It becomes a bigger Tirth or a more important Tirth just because the bhakt has laid their jadan, their feet, into this place. So the spirituality of it comes not because it's a Tirth, it's because the sort of people that are associated with it. That's the benefit of going to a Tirth, is that someone of great avasta has visited this place previously, and the vibe that's been introduced at this place we can benefit from as well.
Yeah, often Tirthas became places of importance because bhakts had gone there and done worship. So those places became Tirthas for that reason. Now many places are Tirthas because bhakts have done bhakti there, or they were born there, or they left their worldly bodies there. Yeah, those places became Tirthas and became important. Now, Tirthas themselves, I say, aren't bad, they were good. Now, bhakts, when they go, often it's said that bhakts goes to Tirthas, and when they bathe in the Tirthas actually saying to God, is Sanu koi bhakt page, who bathes in us to remove the sins that all the bad people and all the sins that they've left. Yeah? And Bhai Gurdas Ji makes reference to this in his own Vara, where he talks about the Ganga, Jamuna, Swasti, all the main Tirthas pray to God to say, Bhakta Lord, those that are close to God, may they come and do Ishnan in us so we become purified, because the other people left so many sins in them. Now, in our Sadiwal, it talks about that Satyug was an era of Santok. And when people were Santoki, they didn't commit pap, they committed less pap than in Kaljug. In Kaljug, it's totally the opposite. Very few honest and real people, and lots of people that are doing false deeds under the guise of doing good things. So Kaljug, in Kaljug, going to a Tirth itself won't help you. And Maharaj says that the real Tirth is Ishnan and doing Nam Simran and following the Guru. I'll just cover a bit about Fakabiji off and the question here.
Yeah. Okay, so Bhakt Kabirji very succinctly talks about a Tirth versus a Bhakt. And it poses a very, very important question. Can the Tirth bada or is the Bhakt bada? Which is bigger? What do you think? So these Tirths have been around for thousands of years in some cases. Or is that bigger or is the Bhakt bigger?
Given what I've said, who purifies the Tirthas? So Bhakt Kabirji says, Kahe Kabir, how pay udasa. I've become troubled by this question. Tirth Bada ke har ka das. The das is a servant or a slave of heart of Vaheguru. So who's bigger? The Tirth itself or the one that cleanses the Tirth itself? The answer is Tirth har ka das is a question now.
God, it's a 50-50 question.
50-50. The Tirth or har ka das?
Okay, put your hands up if you think it's the Tirth bada.
And who says har ka das? Say har ka das.
Har ka das?
Go and says on the screen. Okay, Tirth Bada. I should say the stop, then you'll have to say Tirth Bada. Come on. Ke har ka das. And the answer is, Bhakt Kabirji says, it is har ka das. So, by this doc, we can now say that this doc is clearly saying, yeah, Sunaya Arsadka Ishnan, Naam Sonde Nav, the equivalent of the 68 places of pilgrimage that Ishnan are Behotandaya. You don't need to do that element of it. Yeah.
Just one last point about that. If you remember, we talked previously about when Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj was at Samir Parbat. One of the questions, or one of the requests that the Siddhs made to Guru Nanak Dev Ji was, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, come with us to do Aksarta Asnan. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji said, no, I have Shabd. I don't need anything else. Yeah. Just to illustrate that point further.
Okay, next Pauri, the next doc in the Pauri altogether. Okay, Sunaya Parpar Paviman. Literally means? Tabli, what's it say? Listening, what happens?
Listening, reading, reciting, eyes are clean.
Okay.
So, Maharaj is saying that by performing Nam Simran, reading Bani, all of those good things, gives us Man. Now, Man in this context means honour. It means people from far and wide will say that Banda is great, or that lady is great, because in Parke Naam, Parke, Bani Parke, they've now achieved honour. That's the literal translation of it.
Okay. That's why you're not finding a portrait of me in this room, but you're finding some Mahabhog's pictures in this room being painted. Yeah? And none of them are physically here anymore. But those that do Naam Simran, they obtain honour. Yeah? Sunaya Parpar Pave Man. Now, like worldly Man, some people get Man, they get honour in the world. So, Stephen Hawkins is really, really clever. So, Onu Man melda that he's so clever in his field. There's other people who get Man by reading and becoming educated and becoming professors of this and professors of that.
Yeah. So in this context here, we're talking about spiritual gyan that somebody has achieved through Naam. Now, they continually research, they continue work, they continue do Naam Simran. And it's through those efforts that becomes gyan. That gyan then becomes recognised by other people. So they themselves don't seek honour. The honour just follows them. The honour is just bestowed on them, because Naam is that sort of entity, or spiritual wisdom in this context is so strong and so vast, is that things like honour, admiration, yeah, even worship happens to these people that have actually obtained that state.
Okay. As we said, Bani often gives us examples of what we read in Japji Sahib, yeah? So, Shabd, Tere Man, Har Har Man. By believing and worshipping you, I have gained honour, yeah? Nain Ben Sarvan Suninge, Ang Ange Sukh Paran. That within my body, within my eyes, within my ears, yeah, there is bliss. What do you say? Nanak Bhagtan Sada Vigas, yeah? If ut there this Ravio, in all 10 directions, or in 10 directions, yeah, here and there, what happens? God pervades everywhere. Those bugs know that, yeah? Wherever I look, I see the Lord. Why? You see the Lord everywhere. Where has this been learnt? Yeah? Sadh Sangha which Anke, by sitting in Sangha, yeah, the Brahma pair will be erased, dispelled, it says here. Yeah? Kate Nanak Brahm Gyan. This is a Brahm Gyan, this is spiritual wisdom. This is the wisdom you won't get from a book. You get from Guru Nanak Sahib. Brahm Gyan comes from Maharaj, nowhere else. Yeah. So we get these snippets of information or information or jewels or gon or dan from our gurus, because they tell us that what we should do. That's why sitting in a Sangat room, even today we're sitting as Sangat room. Yeah. We might not be in the main divan, but we are God sitting together, which brings us together to talk about Vaheguru. Yeah? Nobody knows anything more than anybody, but when you discuss and talk about Vaheguru, yeah, then Gon of Vaheguru come to the fore and people start to grasp them. Okay, next doc, all together? All together, that was lost the love again. That's it, that's it. I think what we do, we probably have to feed you, won't we, at half time?
I think
Get
so.
some energy.
Yeah.
Okay. Sune lage sage dhyan. Sage, what does sage mean? Your time, opportune that you turned up to.
Yeah.
Peaceful.
Means what?
Peaceful.
Okay, no, not peaceful. Well, sort of, yeah, could be, yeah. Or any other?
Sage is one of those words that you can't literally
Yeah,
translate.
many
in
meanings.
English.
All
There's,
the-
there's different translations of it.
Anybody else want a different attempt at sage?
Angie?
Grass.
Grasp.
Grasp, no, it's not grasp, yeah.
Any more for any more?
Okay. I'm going to the next slide.
Okay.
Sage means, what Lard saying, what's it say?
A natural state in born nature, but that's the highest spiritual state.
Okay, yeah. You will find the doc sage in Barney in different Barney,
Yeah.
lots of. Sometimes we say let's do Mool Mantra sage, which that sort of says, what did you say sage meant?
Peaceful.
Peacefully, slowly, deliberately, yeah. And what here it says natural state or inborn nature, something that is innate, something that's within, yeah. And this is where Maharaj is saying here, listening intuitively, it happens intuitively. You know, you just get some people in class and they're like, just get everything just like that. And you're still reading the question and you go, yeah, it used to happen to me at school all the time. Okay, so some people intuitively just grasp things, yeah. And Maharaj is saying is that je tusi naam suno, sune lage sahaj dhyan. Your meditative state becomes effortlessly, becomes easily to you, becomes easy.
Spontaneously.
Spontaneously,
That's
another word we can use, yeah.
example of it, yeah.
So, sune lage sahaj dhyan. Now, dhyan is a really, really important one here. I'm just coming into the break. So, when we talked about sonna, we said apapella kadana sonna, and where does it go after that? Without all the scientific thinking. But what's the next boarding after this? Apane manani sonna. And to do that, you need dhyan.
So I think we talk about dhyan in
Yes,
a
a
little
bit
more
later, yeah. So I'm
detail.
just leave it there, yeah.
Nitika. But the key point here is we've talked about different types of sage,
Yeah.
or different explanations of sage. Another one that you could use in this context is poise.
Yeah.
Okay, poise, and also something that is worry-free as well. Something that you're not concerned about because it just happens automatically.
Okay. So, we mentioned this last time, but we mention it again because sonna is just not with the ears. Sonna is with your focus, with your mind, with your chat. Many examples, yeah? So last time we did this one. Tabki ustat karo samtamit savdan ekagrati. We need to do it with total concentration and one-pointedness of mind. That means baki cheezain chhad ke just focus. And often the question, what do we focus on? Yeah? Is that after as well, is it?
It is after that.
Okay. Another example. E man har jeet aaye tum. How? Ek man ek chit hai. You can only do meditation when your mind, your ears, your mind, your attention, your focus all come together. Yeah? That's why sometimes people will close their eyes to cut off some things. They'll go to a quiet place. Yeah?
So it's controlling those senses that would break your dhyan, your ability to actually listen.
What Kabir ji says about Bani, about God's name, koi gaave, ko sune, har nama chit laye. You have to put your conscious awareness into it. And then, kaho Kabir sansa nahi, then there remains no doubt, ant param gatapai, that you will achieve the high status of merging with Vaigu. Okay? Nearly there, aren't we?
Yeah.
Then we can have a break.
By
So,
Gunduz.
oh, that now is that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and finally, then the last stop in every of these boarding is Nanak.
Yeah. So just to backtrack a little bit about dhyan, the importance of dhyan, the power of dhyan is a quick sakhi. Satme Pasha the Sikh sige Pai Gunda. Yeah, a Sikh of Guru Haraya Sahib Ji is many hundreds of miles away from Guru Sahib, but he does Naam Simran. The Kudrati his dhyan goes into Maharaj's jaran, into their feet. He's now focused so much in his bhakti that he can just think of Guru Haraya Sahib Ji and their jaran. And he merges with those jaran. Now many hundreds of miles away, Guru Haraya Ji are sat on their asan in Sangat. And it's now, the program is finished and Guruji sit there 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. And the voice six at this place are now saying to Maharaj, Anke Lungar Tyariya Shaklawanka. And Maharaj sit there. And eventually they get up and walk away. And after a short time, the Sangat then ask Guruji, why were you sat in that position for so long? And Guruji explained, he said, Bhai Gonda was focusing on my jaran. And he said, I couldn't move. I didn't want to move because in that jaran with such tightness that I couldn't physically move. That is dhyan. Yeah, so you might think these are just stories, but if you believe, yeah, and we'll talk about what is the greatness of actually believing, that a Gursikh can focus on his Guru with such intent, with such poise, that Guruji then becomes one with you. And that's the essence of this Sakhi.
Okay, so now we've covered 3 out of the 4 Sunniya Pauriyan, yeah? And the importance is signified by the fact that there's 4 Pauriyan dedicated to Sunnah, yeah? But we said it's not just Sunnah physically, it goes on a stage further than that. That's why the 4 Pauriyan are followed by the Manniya Pauriyan. And when you do those things, so Gavige, Sunninge, so the Gavige bit we do with our tongue and our dasana, yeah? The Sunna bit we do first with our ears, then with our man. That's why the man comes next. And then, quite logically, that's why the Panch Parwan Pauriyan follow these Pauriyan. Because that status can only be achieved, yeah? We can talk about the Panch Parwan Pauri, but you can only achieve that status when you've done the other 3 bits before that. Okay? So we'll stop now, take 5 minutes, have a stretch, and we'll come back and do the final Sunni Pauri and go from there.
So we're just going to do a little bit of a reintroduction of a few ideas, a recap in some cases. So one analogy that we'll draw is when you eat food. The importance of it is that you've got to chew it, swallow it, and then it starts working its magic. Then you start digesting it, you start breaking the food down, and then it starts giving you sort of physical benefits. Now, in much the same way, if you didn't swallow the food, the benefit that you would get from that food would be very limited. You do get some benefit from it because you start digesting food in some types of foods as soon as you start putting it in your mouth, like carbohydrates. But the real sort of benefit from it is actually you eating it. Now, in much the same way, is Naam and Bani has to enter our hirda, has to enter our insides. Now, we can say the words with our tongues, yeah? We can say the words and we can hear them, but once we've heard them, we need to do something else with it. And we've talked a little bit about dhyan and the importance of dhyan and the function that dhyan has in our acknowledging of something that we've seen or heard. Now, one example of that could be that, I think we gave this example last time, where you're driving your car on the motorway and you miss your junction. Why? Because you were talking on the phone or you were doing something else. So whilst you can see something, it doesn't necessarily mean you're actually taking it in. In the same way, if you were walking home one day and you miss your turning and you walk past your house. Why? Because sometimes you can be talking to somebody and you might even be doing the talking and you'll say to your friend, what did I just say there? And your friend might turn around to you and say, well, you were the one doing the talking. Don't know about anything what you were saying. No. Why? Because my dhyan was somewhere else. So dhyan has a huge part to play in all of this. because without dhyan, we can't truly listen.
Okay, so we'll go into the body, then we'll talk about this. Okay, so the body begins how altogether? Sunae, Sara, and again Sunae. Okay, so what does that say in blue? That's
Listening, dive deep into the ocean of virtue.
deep into the ocean of virtue. Now, is this the like how many samundar are there? Like Sat Samundar? Is this the eighth ocean? Is it? So what does it mean? Dive deep into the ocean of virtue. Where's that in between the Atlantic and the Pacific? Is it there? Where's this ocean Maharaj is talking about? Hanji, in your mind. Yeah, it is. It is. But there is also an ocean of virtues. So Maharaj Vaheguru is a treasure of excellence. Yeah, Nanak Gavige Guni Nidan. Nidan is treasure. Maharaj is a treasure of God. Now, why do people sometimes dive deep into the ocean? Apart from just like scuba diving or something. Any idea? Somebody else? I'll give somebody else a chance. There, Jamont. Why do people dive to the bottom of the ocean?
What they're looking for.
Yeah. Other than that, more valuable creatures. Okay, go on.
Find new creatures.
Find
New creatures.
new creatures. Yeah. Anji.
And
Treasures. Yeah. Now, those treasures, like pearls and other things that are precious, are sometimes found in the ocean. Yeah. So the analogy here is that in an ocean there is valuable things that you want. And Maharaj says, but turning to Bani, remember we talked about Bhakti Pipa, and Bhakti Pipa said, Jo Brahmande so Pinde, Jo Koje so Pai, yeah? And he said, inside is Nidan, there's treasures inside this body. Like there is treasures outside in the world, there's treasures inside as well. But you have to do Koj, you have to search, and you have to look.
so in much the same way as that, I think the analogy we drew last time was you will find shells on the beach. Yeah. So to find shells is dead easy. You just go to any beach, you'll find shells and probably a load of plastic as well. That's another story. But you pick up the shells and you'll take them home. Now, if you're wanting something more valuable, you'd have to dive into that water. I wouldn't recommend it, but with the right equipment maybe. Dive deep into that water, and then on the surface or on the base of that ocean, you'll find all sorts of valuables that you wouldn't find anywhere else. So what we're being told is that the deeper you dig, the better the virtue, or the better the prize. In much the same way that the deeper we go into our hirda, yeah, the better we actually get to know ourselves, the more virtues we'll find in there, and the better the virtues.
Okay, so Sunay Sara Guna Ke Ga. So you're not talking about one or two gone, we're talking about an ocean full of gone. That many. Yeah? And who has those gone? Yeah? We don't have these gone, we have to get them from Guru Sahib, from Vaheguru. Yeah? Guna ka nidan ek hai, ape de taako pai. Those gone come from the Lord. The Lord is the treasure of all virtues, yeah, and He gives them, and then we receive them. Odani melde. Bin nave sab vishori. You won't get anything without naam, but gur ke sabd malai. So how do we get those? By listening to the shabd of the Guru. That's why the talk is Sunay Sara Guna Ke Gaha. As we often say, every talk you read in Japji Sahib, you'll find many more in Guru Granth Sahib Ji that support what Maharaj is saying. That one's probably should have done. Yeah, this is the one that I should have left before. That was sneaked in, yeah. Is that where we are now? Yeah. Okay, so as well as Sara Guna Ke Ga, Maharaj also says altogether Sunay and together. Okay.
So, 3 different words there. Sikh, Veer, Badshah. So, before we get into that, literal translation, Word for word translation. Anybody? Any volunteers? Andy.
Listening, the sheikhs, religious scholars, spiritual teachers, and emperors.
Okay.
Which one's which? Which one's a sheikh?
The sheikh.
Sheikhs, that's good.
Yeah.
Peer.
Spiritual teachers.
Okay. And the other one, Padsha. What's a Padsha?
Emperor.
Anything else we use as a word for Padsha?
Raja.
King, yeah. Ruler, yeah.
Okay, so now we've done the literal translation. It's now let's delve into in a little bit more depth. Okay.
So in Arabic, a sheikh is somebody who is a leader, yeah, a head. Like Fulana Sardar, so and so is in charge. A sheikh is somebody who has a high status, yeah, in the Arabic world. Similarly, in the Arabic world, a peer is a holy religious leader or a person, yeah. So Maharaj is saying by listening, ਤੁਸੀਂ sheikh भी बन सकते हैं, peer भी बन सकते हैं. In fact, those people that have achieved those statuses is because at some point they would have listened to the name of God or worship God in some way. So, which takes us then. I won't say anything more on that. Yeah. Okay. So the next bit then, still the same, but I put it in red now. Sunay Seg Peer Sa.
Okay. So we're going to just delve into a little bit deeper into what is a Badsha, okay? Because the literal translation of a Badsha is a king, but within Sikhi and within the realm of religion, a Badsha is something else as well.
Okay. Now, a Badsha will start. Should we say what Raja is yet, or should we do that after?
No, I think that's now. That is now.
You say it then.
Okay. So, another word for Badsha is Raja or Maharaja. But in ancient times, a Raja wasn't somebody that sat on a throne. A Raja was somebody that did bhakti, somebody that did Nam Abhyas, somebody that did Nam Simran, to a point where they were spiritually very, very high. To the point where their desires had all been consumed. They had no desires whatsoever. And somebody would see that person and say, "Eh, Rajaya." Now, I know you're great scholars of Punjabi, all of you. Yep. One example here.
Yeah.
So, you'll be eating roti at home, and your mum and your dad will say to you, "Raj ke roti khayo." Yeah, what does that mean? Raj ke. Anji, eat.
Shout.
Fully.
Freely.
Freely.
Fully. Acha, fully.
Holly.
Holly.
Yeah, no. To be Raj means to be satisfied. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you've got a nice full stomach by the end of it.
So son of Raja again that you don't need anymore.
You're fully satisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
In the same way as a spiritual person or a jaya, it just has no desires. In the same way that when we eat, we're satisfied. Now, that's the true definition of somebody that Raja. That's the ancient, if you like, description. Now, by Gurdas Ji.
Yeah, we'll come on to that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So we move on to an example by Gurdas Ji. But if you think generally when you listen to Bani, you might listen to Kirtan. Now, the biggest Badsha of all is Vaheguru. Yeah, because how Raja is Vaheguru. Does Vaheguru need any more? He has everything, or God has everything that God ever needs and will need. Yeah. So Guru Gobind Singh Ji says, "Tum ho sab rajan ke raja." That you are the king of all these other kings. There might be a king of a country who has so much wealth. There might be a bigger country with a bigger king, and he has that much wealth. But Bhai Gurdas Ji talks about this also, that Jere Bhakt they are a Raja. They are in the true sense a Raja. That's why it says Padsha, says Sunay Se Ki Peer Padsa. How do they become a Raja? Yeah? Now, let's have a little think. Go back when you first learnt about kings and queens. Where does a king sit? On his throne. Inside a castle. What flies outside his castle? Anji? There, do you want?
Somebody say flag, did they? Did you say flag?
Somebody said flag. Yeah. Who sits next to the king on the throne? The queen. And who helps run the country with the king? Not slaves. Salada. Yeah. That's going back too far. Hanji.
Prime Minister.
Oh, Prime Minister.
Ministers, yeah.
Aap Punjabi ਚ ਕੀ ਕਹੀਦਾ to Prime Minister?
Prime Minister.
Close.
Modi Sahib?
No. What do you call the Prime Minister? They already know. Shall I tell you? Theresa May to tell you, so she can't hear. Yeah. Okay. The word in Punjabi is Pradhan Mantri. A Mantri is a minister. A Pradhan is one who's like in charge. Yeah. Okay. So, a Mantri. Raja. And what do kings have ample amount of at dinner time? Food. Yeah. So, if you take the general view, regardless of where they are, you'll have a king who sits on a throne next to the queen, or the queen or the king next to her, with Mantri, with the Raja, with a castle, with a flag. And they are called Raja because they're the Jaya. They don't need much more. They pretty much have got all the bases covered there. Yeah? And we won't go through necessarily the Bani in Gurmukhi because Bhai Gurdas Ji's verses can be difficult to comprehend. Yeah? But if we look at the English translations, yeah? It says, well, let's mention it. Jab Sat Singhasan Saj Santo Mantri. So we talked about some of these words today. Jab the Sat we were talking about before. Singhasan, where you sit. Saj, we've done. Santok, we've done. Mantri. Then we know what is. Dheeraj, we've done before. Yeah? Raja hai. Yeah. So, Bhai Gurdas Ji says, the obedient Gursikh of the true Guru has truth and true morals as his throne. That's why Bhakta Raja, they have a throne. What is their throne? Truth and true morals. So if Gursikhs have truth and truth, Parajaya. Yeah? While patience and contentment are his ministers, we've got Pradhan Mantri. We don't need other mantris. Yeah? His flag is the eternal preserving righteousness. So if we practice righteousness, Sade Chande which all there, we have a throne, we're kings, we're Raja. Goes on and says. Do you want me to carry on? Yeah. We heard about Dasam Dwar, the 10th opening. Yeah. The Sikh of the Guru resides in the 10th opening. Yeah. Kindness is his prime queen. His past deeds and fortune is his treasurer. While love is his royal feast and food. He is not a slave of worldly delicacies. Rajya. Bhags are Rajya. They have a queen, they have a throne, they have a treasurer, they have the money, they have the food. But they have.
So the essence of what we're saying is that these virtues, or the true examples of these virtues, are in Bhags or Gursikh. Yeah. So these are the virtues that we need, and by having those virtues, we are then Badsha. We are then the equivalent of being kings. Because Appa bhi Rajjanate. Because once you have all of these good things, the hunger for those, that Trishna for other things, diminishes, disappears, eradicates. So that's the importance of this Shabd, is for us to understand that what a true king is not necessarily one that sits on a throne, but one that actually controls and is able to then use their virtues that they have.
So all these good virtues, as you say, yeah, and eventually you say that, you see today's kings and ministers, and their policy of reigning doesn't seem to be very fair, and no regard for humanity and righteousness, yeah, and there's no forgiveness, very little forgiveness left. So Bhai Gurdas Ji is in essence telling us that, yeah, by listening you become a Badsha, not the worldly Badsha, but one that is content with everything else around you.
Often the description is given of Badsha, or another description of given of Badsha, is somebody that preserves somebody else's honour. Because one word that we use in Punjabi, Gurmukhi, for respect or self-respect is Pat. Yeah, if you say Kisi di Pat legi, that means their self-respect has disappeared. But Badshah is somebody that preserves somebody's honour. Yeah, and often we talk about the Gurus as being Badshah because they often looked after the honour of everybody. So that's another translation of what Badshah is as well.
Okay, so a shabd from Bani is that essentially what Bhagats are getting and Gursikhs get from Naam is Prem Ras. A love that is based on a ras. Or a ras is something that you enjoy, but this is based on love, yeah? And it's not a pretense, it's real. So Guruji says, Suno loka ma prem ras paya. That they achieve prem ras. The reason I mentioned prem ras, I think, was it mentioned in...
It is in there.
It's mentioned in...
Preet, it is there. Staple.
There we go, yeah. Yeah. Was it this one? No.
Yeah, this
That was it, did I miss it?
first one.
Oh yeah, sorry. I kept looking in too many places, yeah. Preet, yeah. Preet means love, yeah. And Guruji is saying here, Suno loka ma prem ras paya. That I've tasted the real love, the elixir of love, yeah. And what happens when you have that ras gives you something else, yeah. Durjan mare, very sangare, Satgur moko, har naam devaya, yeah. Now, that doesn't mean every people are your enemies. The 5 evils are your enemies, yeah? And they are removed from you. That's why Bhagats are sada in Vagas. In Bani it also says, in I think it's in Barama, Jini chakya prem ras se tript rahe agai. Those that have tasted prem ras, yeah, what do they get? They become tript. They become satiated and satisfied in every way. Next line, all together. All together again.
So who haven't we had do literal translation for us?
Done, Jill. What's it saying, Blue?
Listening, even the blind find the path.
Okay, what does that mean then?
No.
You do know. You do job yourself.
Yeah.
What's it say then?
Uh,
Okay, what does it mean? Sune ande pavera.
Ande konde.
blind.
Raki inda.
Uh-huh.
Pave
Put the two
means...
together. Find.
That's fine.
Okay, so does that mean that if we go down to Sedgley Bine Institute and you let all the people out, that they'll safely cross the road and get over the other side? Is that what it means?
I don't know.
Is it talking about Hanji?
It's talking about like even the blind people can like find the path of Raiku and like go in the right path in life instead of just going
So-
off and doing random stuff.
The type of blind person Maharaj is referring to here is people who are spiritually blind. Yeah, जिन्होंने अपने अंदर चाती मारी नहीं हैगी. So you know when we reach a state, well Maharaj tells us that when we reach a state and we close our eyes and we focus on Naam, inside us there's suddenly light. Yeah, so even when we close our eyes and we can see light, you know that spiritually you're not blind anymore. You can actually see something. Or when you do Naam Bani, Shabda Abhyas, you actually see something when you close your eyes. That means you're not blind anymore. Now, if we close our eyes and we see nothing, or we don't see the right things, we know that we are spiritually blind. So Maharaj is saying is that Naam, or the essence of Naam, gives us this Shakti, this power, that from being a state of spiritually blind, we can suddenly see, we can suddenly find our way, we can suddenly start walking the path of Vaheguru.
So if you take an example, even a blind person can use their other senses to guide them sometimes.
So what do blind people use? What senses do they use if they can't see? Vision. They hear. You'll find that a blind person's hearing is generally better than an able-sighted person. Why? Because that takes over.
Or they will take assistance of guide dogs, yeah? Things
Or
like
they
that.
use the
Or they use
senses to
six,
touch,
yeah. So, here Maharaj is saying that Bani in the same way can give you guidance and direction. And that's what Bani does. So those that didn't believe before, you'll see people that didn't have an interest in Sikhi or in God or Dharma. And then they have an experience in life and they become awakened and all of a sudden they can see. Now that's not just in Sikhi, that's in other religions as well. So Maharaj is saying that by listening to Naam, listen to Bani, yeah, and their Pavera, those people that did not previously see the Ra, did not see the way, the path, they now see it. Yeah, and they become, they can then also become one with Vaheguru. Next talk all together. Okay. What does that mean? Harako, you've been volunteered. She says that your presentation was so good, you can read this for us. You left it there.
Listening, the unreachable comes within your grasp.
The unreachable. Does that mean you can reach the top shelf at home?
Without a chair.
Without a chair. What does it mean? Harako, what does that mean? You can probably reach the top shelf.
Things that you might not have been able to do spiritually before you kind of.
Yeah, good, yeah. Something you could not. So what couldn't you do 10 years ago? Spiritually, Angie?
Probably like do justice.
That's right, yeah. How many have you moved on from not knowing anything about Sikhi to at least knowing something and doing some part and listening and understanding? Yeah, so that's something that becomes available. But heart of it has to go. Okay, let's do the literal. Heart to kill that. And okay, the next one is us to go. Keep going. What we gonna accept as the answer? So somebody says, no. 100 you answered.
Grass?
You like grasp, don't you? That's the second time? Yeah, no.
So if you were measuring water, or the depth of water, one way of doing it is putting your hand into that water and saying, well, it comes to about there. Yeah, so that's one way of trying to understand what the depth of something is. Now, Maharaj is using that analogy by saying that by Nam Vani, that something that was originally something unfathomable for us, we couldn't even begin to measure it, that you now have the tools in your grasp to be able to say, do you just mind just touching? Let me just give it a bit of a shake. Okay. Yeah, so suddenly you now have the tools to be able to measure something in the spiritual realm. Something, you can say that Vaheguru is now, I can understand the creation by this much, by that much, or by that much. So suddenly something becomes achievable, something that becomes measurable.
Yeah. So it's from a spiritual perspective. So, for instance, we've heard about that as Barney and Nam, and the bugs get further and further. That's why when we start at a low point and we build our knowledge. And we said that listening is the first part of the spiritual journey, where you listen. But eventually, as you go, that which was deep now becomes almost like you can grasp it. Yeah. So if I said to you, can you grasp the ocean in one go? Well, Maharaj is saying it's like grasping the whole of the ocean once you have this knowledge, once you have this gyan. Suniya hatha vesagal.
Yeah. So you can understand what is sansar, what's the word, what's the world, what is Nirangar, what is God, what's God's creation.
We talked about last time how Namdev Ji described how many veins were in the body and how many main arteries, etc. And we talked about how Pipa describes the whole Brahman being inside us. So these bugs who didn't have any worldly knowledge in terms of education, they knew these things. How did they know these things? Because that which is not comprehensible to other people, they can comprehend. Yeah. Physically this happens too. When we talk about the greatness of Japji Sahib and our belief in Japji Sahib, and sometimes we say, and we say, nah, that's just made up. Yeah. We did the 18th century Sikhs. Maharaja Ranjit Singh, one of his battles, he had to cross a river, Attak di Darya, the river of Attak, flooded, full of water. And he needs to go and send help to his general, Hari Singh Noble, who's outnumbered by the Afghans. So at that time, they cannot cross the river because it's flooded. So Baba Sahib Singh Bedi, who is a descendant of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, is also with them. And Babaji does ardas, and in that ardas, they say, Suninge Haat Hove Asga. and they ask that the river levels drop or recede, and the way becomes clear for them. And on doing the Ardas and doing Japji Sahib, this happened, and Maharaja Ranjit Singh was able to take assistance, to the northern parts of Afghanistan to give help to his general. So we say these things can happen. There's many things in Sikhi today that you hear. So and so had cancer, so and so had this. Then they started to recite Japji Sahib. That which cannot be comprehended, doctors say we can't cure this person, and that person becomes cured. Because that which is not in our human grasp becomes able for us to grasp all of a sudden. So, final line once again. Nanak Bhagta Sunay. Okay. Synopsis? Yeah.
Okay, we're just going to bring together what we've talked about, these 4 Pauriyan of Sunniya. And so the first point we make is to emphasise the utmost importance. Maharaj has dedicated 4 lines, 4 verses to Sunniya. Now, Sunniya is so important because it's our first step on our journey to Waheguru. And Maharaj repeats this 4 times for that reason, that you can't do it without it. This is your beginning. But listening isn't just with your ears. The function of the dhyan is also of equal importance as your ears. So without dhyan, without opening your dhyan, your senses, your understanding of Bani will be diminished. Won't be there. Okay. So we've also said repeatedly that Nanak Bhagtan Sada Vigas Sunye Dukh Paap Ka Nas. So we've said that pain and sin are also eradicated, disappear. Why? Because the avastha that a Gursikh, a Bhakt achieves by doing Nam Simran is that their sort of propensity, their likelihood to cause harm to others also reduces and becomes 0. Now if you don't do harm to somebody, you're not committing sin, are you? So for that reason, the saints are preserved, the Gursikhs are preserved. All divine knowledge, spiritual powers, the benefits of making pilgrimage, the uncountable virtues that Nam gives you, is only through listening to Nam. Okay. So again, everything that you want to achieve spiritually, Nam Divitya. And then, sorry, you find me? Yeah. The last sort of verse is that we say that the Bhakts are in perpetual bliss, Ipagas. Why? Because for those good reasons that we've just said. But then also remember, Waheguru is also in that same state, because Waheguru gives his virtues to his saints, to his Bhakts, his Gursikhs.
Keep going, because I'm just finding something.
Okay, so these are the sort of 4 verses that we've covered off. Hopefully, sort of makes sense. If there is anything, again, you'll remember that hopefully it has been recording today. So if there's anything that you think you haven't quite caught, do listen to the recording, or bring your questions with you next time.
Okay. Now,
mention next. That's all.
Do you want to do that after we've done this? Sure. Yeah. Okay. What I want to do now is where we've done the part of the boarding up, is just quickly bring it together in Kirtan form. So we'll go through the boarding of the boarding of Japji Sahib in terms of the Sunandinga boarding in Kirtan Roop, and let's follow the meanings. So remember, you've been told there's lots of Gon that you achieve through listening.